So thank you all for coming out. I am so excited to be here with you all, be at the conference today. This is a topic Aaron and I both care a lot about. So just a quick another introduction. My name is David Schwab. I have the pleasure of leading marketing at Fundraise, and I have great people on my team like Aaron.
Yeah, David's my boss, which is why I'm here speaking. But I'm head of content at Fundraise. So obviously storytelling is super important to me, something I love to talk about, yeah.
So what we're going to be looking at is a formula for telling stories that combines both the emotional tissue of great storytelling with the logical connection of good, sound numbers. So for the next 15 minutes here or so, Aaron and I are going to tell you a story that's really near and dear to our hearts, a story we think is really important. We're going to tell you the story of Fundraise.
Fundraise is born out of nonprofit need. The founders, Justin, Jason, and Tony, were nonprofiteers working together at a nonprofit, and they faced a lot of the fundraising frustrations that you all face, that nonprofits face. We're talking painstaking data entry, double or sometimes triple, practically non-existent peer-to-peer tools, zero way to connect all of their programs, and a giving experience that seemed designed to discourage donations. So what they ended up with was a towering tech stack, but barely breathing digital fundraising. Being the innovative nonprofit people that they were, they decided to confront these challenges head on, and they started from scratch. They built state-of-the-art technology with time-saving tools that really prioritized data management and delivered a donor experience that was really delightful. It was what they wanted as donors. At the end of the day, it was a marriage between nonprofit innovation and technology. And because they literally have been in your shoes, we're all in this together. And that's how Fundraise started.
Now I want to look at what works with storytelling. Why is storytelling important? What does it do? When you hear a good story like that, you're left feeling connected. There's emotional tissue with that. You feel a good story leaves you motivated, passionate, empowered. When you hear a story like that, you start to create that connective tissue. They get me, right? They understand my frustrations. They understand my needs. And if they understand my needs, then just maybe this product is for me, right? A good story taps into a critical piece of the storytelling arc like this, where you're telling the story of us. You're creating a community. You're creating a place to belong. When you're able to connect that, I am part of this movement, that brings the person you're telling the story into your own story, and it becomes their story.
Real quick, we're going to back up and we're going to talk about what is a good story and why it matters, and even how to get a good story. So just to start out with, why would a good story even matter? Why do you need one? And it's because it's your way to connect with your audience. It's your way to build relationships with your donors beyond just that initial donation or action of support. It is the way that you long-term build that relationship, right? In order to make that connection, you have to share a moment of vulnerability. You have to share the emotion, obviously, whether it's a celebration, whether it's a problem that you're dealing with. And the authenticity behind that moment of vulnerability is what makes a good story. If it is contrived, if it's false, if it's forced, you know it, your audience knows it, they're not invested, they're not going to take the action that you want, it's not going to have the impact that you want. And finally, we asked the question, how do you get a good story? We were talking with Olga Woltman on a podcast episode, maybe a couple of podcast episodes ago. Shameless plug, nonstopnonprofitpodcast.com. But her answer to that question is, it's in the questions. It's in the questions that you're asking. You have to ask the questions that get to the heart of the story. If you're asking a question, what happened to make this change? What happened? What is your story? You're just reporting on what happened journalistically. If you just add that one question at the end, and how did that make you feel? Just follow that. Go down the rabbit hole if you need to, but that's where your story is, down that rabbit hole. So that's the why. That's how you get the good story. So I think David is now going to give you the numbers. The numbers guy is going to give you the numbers story about Fundraise.
Fundraise customers average 3 times faster online revenue growth than the rest of the industry. It doesn't just stop there. Fundraise customers grow online revenue 74% year over year on average, and that's sustained over the last 5 years. They grow recurring revenue on average 53% year over year. Fundraise giving forms convert at 50%. Yes, that means 1 out of every 2 people who start a gift through a Fundraise form go on to complete it. And Fundraise customers are able to utilize innovative campaigns like peer-to-peer fundraising, where they raise 2 times the average value of a peer-to-peer fundraiser. With numbers like these, it's no wonder why thousands of organizations worldwide trust Fundraise every single day to fuel their fundraising systems. But I don't want you to just take my number. I don't want you just to take my word for it. I want you to hear and look at the impact Fundraise has had on a peer of yours, Action Against Hunger. Action Against Hunger adopted Fundraise's innovative giving tools a few years ago, but they wanted to test in and see what the impact would be. And the results were quite impressive. Action Against Hunger increased online gift conversion rate by over 88% during the course of their onboarding test. But more important than that, they increased the value of their recurring revenue by 66% during the course of their test. That is vital, reliable, recurring revenue that sustains their mission. See, with Fundraise, the vision of revenue growth is no longer a nonprofit dream. It is the new standard of excellence. And it bodes one final question: whether or not you're ready to grow your revenue faster and create more mission impact that your organization was built for.
So things I loved about that story, David: your numbers were really impressive, yay. But I was missing the celebration. I was missing the moment of vulnerability. I was missing the opportunity to make a connection with you and invest in what you're trying to tell me. If you can't be excited about those numbers, why should I be excited? Why should I be invested? But you had a nice call to action. You had the very good numbers. You even had a story arc. It just lacked that moment of vulnerability.
Like Erin said, numbers are emotionless, but they're important to storytelling. Numbers create what I call ownable change. You have a huge vision. Your organization wouldn't exist if it didn't have a vision for making the world a better place. That's inspiring and motivating and something someone wants to lean into, but it can often be overwhelming. If you're painting a vision of world impact, a donor can often get lost in the wave of motivation. Without a tangible way to say, I understand how my individual contribution ladders into this great world change that I want to see, they might not feel like they matter. So numbers create ownable change. It's also no doubt today that donors are adopting an investor mindset. What does this mean? Quite literally, it means that donors want to see a return on investment. Unlike a return on investment in the stock market where I give $1 or put $1 in and I want to see money come back, they're literally looking for an impact return on investment. They're asking the question, if I am giving you my monetary resource, how much are you going to return in the world impact I want to see compared to other organizations that have a similar mission as yours? And finally, numbers give you the chance to prove efficacy of your cause and inspire confidence. When you can paint the vision of the impact you want to make in the world and then go on and show that you're actually making it, it proves to donors that you're effective, but it also inspires the confidence that if you've done it before, you're going to be able to repeat it and do it again. So my investment in your cause is going to make the change I want to see in the world. A little over 8 years ago, Fundraise debuted at the Link Gala. And the rest, as they say, is history. But not history that we've forgotten, no. It's history that's gone on to continually innovate and excite. Over the last 8 years, Fundraise hasn't left its roots of commitment to making fundraisers' lives easier and providing innovation to the sector. And today, we get to look at the impact that Fundraise makes. It equips fundraisers to take on new strategies like peer-to-peer fundraising, but it doesn't just let them do it, it helps them do it better. With tools like Appeal AI that writes fundraising scripts, campaigns, and copy for you, organizations are able to raise 2 times more than the average peer-to-peer fundraising campaign with Fundraise's suite of tools. Fundraise is committed to making the experience as great for a donor as it is for the experience for the fundraiser using it. And that shows in the fact that Fundraise giving forms convert at 50%. Yes, that means 1 out of every 2 people who start a gift through a Fundraise form go on to make a gift. We can't even compare what that looks like to the rest of the industry because it is so far and above what the standard is today. What works well when you use stories and numbers? You get to create head and heart alignment. This is where passion becomes action. When you tell that powerful story, you create the swell of emotional excitement like Aaron was talking about, and then you bring it home with numbers. You create that ability to say, I am part of a community, but I'm also part of a successful community. I know that I can invest here because I know that they've proven that they can do what they're saying. Like we've talked about, numbers ground the narrative you're telling. It creates a reason to believe the vision. What I love about combining numbers with stories, and a lot of people aren't paying attention to this, is it creates a path towards significant donor loyalty. We all know there's a retention crisis, and that is a topic for a different session at a different time. But when you're able to show donors that their investment in your cause is creating the type of impact that they want to see reliably, sustainably, and recurring, they're going to buy in, and they're going to maintain loyalty, and you're going to be able to retain donors better simply through good storytelling. So we're going to look at a few different examples of Fundraise customers who've applied this type of storytelling formula. So first, we have a video from our friends at Dig Deep. As you saw in this video, Dig Deep was able to very quickly articulate the gravity and the scale of the need. They had a clear connection to their mission and how they address the need. The video, even though it was simple, light animation, minimal audio, and words on a slide, it was deeply engaging. And you left knowing how Dig Deep is going to address the issue. If you were like me, you watched that video and left feeling like you could actually make a difference and you wanted to take action. There is a real need that really needs to be addressed now. But what we did see in here, and what we've talked about a lot, is when you use numbers to bring home that tangible personal impact, that was missing from this video. Now, we have to look at the video in context, right? This video is meant to be for a mass audience. You can't tie that personally in this case, but when you're creating an appeal like this and using stories and numbers, you want to finish with that very strong, very direct, personally applicable call to action.
Wags and Walks, this is an example, whereas the first one was a video, this one is an About Us page on Wags and Walks website. Wags and Walks is, I'm a dog person, they're one of my favorites. But what I wanted to showcase in this particular example is this is a very, very recognizable format. You all are looking at it and you're like, yeah, I see this all the time. The beauty of that simplicity and recognizability is that your donors, your audience, are going to be recognizing it as well, which makes it much easier to digest. It makes it easier to make that instinctive action if you're not having to think about it as much. The first sentence is where they make their moment of vulnerability. Devastated by the number of innocent dogs being euthanized. That is the moment of vulnerability that you're trying to tap into. And then they go straight into their mission. So they're tying those two together, right, for the ultimate investment. Then they throw in the challenge or risk. So we have the moment of vulnerability, we have tie into the mission, and then we have the risk or challenge that they're taking by saying, you know, we went ahead, we made another location in Nashville, we struck out, onto a new path as well. And at that point, we're at the top of the story arc where they put in the number. And it seems pretty simple. It's just one little sentence, one little number. Since 2011, Wags and Walks has collectively saved more than 10,500 dogs. That number it encapsulates their impact. It is core and crucial to their mission. And they put it right at the top of the story arc. And they grounds it, and then they come back in, lead into gratitude and the ask. And the ask is very soft. With your help, we can save so many more dogs. But it's right there, all together, lovely and beautiful. And because it is very simple and very recognizable, it's also easily repeatable and scalable for any nonprofits. This is something that, you know, if you don't already have it, you can go ahead and just write it up easy enough, just write it up, no problem. Write it up next week. But it is scalable. You can add 1 or 2, maybe 3 numbers in there. You can bold it. They can have broken out that one sentence separately to make it highlighted even more. But overall, this is very simple. It's easy to do, and it's, like I said, scalable as well.
The next example we're going to look at is a social media post from our friends at The Block in Chicago. I'm not going to read the post. I'm going to let it roll through, and you guys can look at that while I dissect some of what we saw worked well here. So first, it had a really compelling hook that created an empathetic connection. The start of their post said, "You are not enough." And my goodness, if we haven't all felt that a few times in our career, or in our daily lives. So it creates a really compelling hook, and that's really important, particularly for a story told in social media when your number one job in social media is to get someone to stop scrolling. So they did a really good job with a hook and crafting an emotional connection very early by hooking you and then telling you the cause of what they're talking about. And then they went on to make an immediate, concrete need. They told you through an emotional hook and connection, they showed you the need of the children in Chicago that they're serving. Then they prove their success, right? So it shows the scale of the need, but then it goes on immediately to show how they've successfully addressed that need. And then they finish by creating a tangible and ownable impact. You remember I talked about how stories can make an individual feel like they're able to achieve the global results of your cause through their personal gift. The Block does that really well in this appeal. And then finally closes with a highly relevant contextualized call to action. When you give a recurring gift of this amount each month, it does this in a child's life. So this is a really, really good example of the combination of stories and numbers to create action.
This is the final example. This one is an email, a fundraising email. Somebody named David from Innocence Project. If you don't know what Innocence Project does, they work to exonerate wrongfully incarcerated folks. And their work is so very emotional. They don't have to dig very deep to hit that moment of vulnerability. What they've done is pretty interesting. It's very similar to the Dig Deep example that we saw, where they start with a really big number, something to impress you. And in this case, what they're saying is they work on average for 7 years on a case, which seems like a lot. Then they go into the individual story of Malcolm Alexander, and they just blow that 7 years out of the water. They worked on this man's case for 22 years, and that is showing the sustained need over time. which then leads into the ask for sustained giving, recurring giving. So what they have done is they've really brought it to the very most human level possible. They've gotten that moment of vulnerability in. They have also tied it to their mission, and then they gave the numbers and brought it home with the ask.
Now that we've gone through what stories and numbers look like together through a few different examples, we want to give you some practical tools, tips to take home with you so you can, as soon as you're back in the office on Monday, start applying these strategies. So we're going to give you a formula for storytelling that just makes sense. The combination of art and math, as we like to call it. So first, you're going to focus on building momentum. I talked a lot about it, but you want to introduce, right? You want to connect your cause with the audience you're talking to and why they should pay attention. Once you're introduced, you want to hook. This is where you show the gravity of the need. You want to connect with someone and you want to make it very clear the context in which you're talking to them. Then you want to make your audience feel it. You've introduced your cause. You've introduced the need. You've hooked them in. You've set the expectation of what's going to happen. Now you need to make them feel the pain of the big need that your organization addresses in the world. That is where we move from building momentum to bringing it home. Once you've made that need felt, you want to remind your audience of your mission's connection to the need. So you've painted the picture of the need in the world. Now you get to go back and say, this is exactly how we're uniquely suited to fix this big problem. That's when your offer and ask comes in. Because we're uniquely suited to do this, we are able to create the type of change at scale that no one else is. But we need your help. Then you close. This is where numbers come in really valuably. Part of that transition from the offer and ask to close. Did you know that for your gift of only $3, we can feed and shelter a family for a week? Who else can do that? We are. We're uniquely suited to do that. Right now, your gift of $50 can feed a family of 5 for a week who are displaced because of a war. I can't even feed my family of 5 for a day for $50, right? This is where you show that you're able to solve that cause that that person wants to see in the world uniquely and deliver that return on investment. Then you close. Share a success story. Show that impact through the lens of an individual whose life was changed. Remind the reader, the audience, the listener of your organization and your mission and how they can make a personal difference at a global scale by investing through you. Finally, we have a few tips to help you tell great stories and combine stories and numbers.
Like we said earlier, asking the right questions is going to get you the story. Like we were talking about, there's no better way to get your supporters involved, get them invested, than to give them that moment of vulnerability, than to relay the emotion to them. So if you're just doing the journalistic type of relaying the information, there's more to it. There's always more to it. So just asking, like, how did that make you feel? Going deeper is where you're going to get the story.
Stories and numbers, as we talked about, create head and heart alignment. It allows you to fulfill the investor mindset that donors are adopting today, and it puts your stories into action.
When you're telling the story of an individual human specifically, you have to treat it really responsibly with great ethics. You have to tell it from their point of view. It's not your story. You are relaying it. You are relaying the impact to them. You tell it from their point of view and just do it ethically. Yeah.
Finally, we want to leave you with a quote. If you'll think back to the origin story fundraiser we were telling you, one of those 3 nonprofiteers is named Justin Wheeler. He happens to be my boss and the founder and CEO of Fundraise. When we asked him about stories and why stories matter, this is what he had to say. You want to trust your donors with emotional moments. Vulnerability, relief, and celebration lead people to become invested supporters. This is his way of saying, get head and heart buy-in. Thank you all so much for your time, attention, and patience today. Like I said, this is a topic that Aaron and I care a lot about. We're both marketers, storytellers, but we have a passion for fundraising and we want to see the world a better place. So I hope that there was a tidbit, a strategy, an idea that you're able to take away from here